Daniel Hayes never expected that a normal repair shift would change his life. He floated quietly near the outer hull of the diplomatic vessel Horizon Bridge, tightening a loose panel while watching distant stars shimmer like frozen sparks. Space always felt peaceful to him. Unlike many others, he did not chase glory or adventure. He preferred solving problems, fixing machines, and helping where needed. Humans were still new in the galactic community. Many alien species saw them as emotional and unpredictable. Some respected their courage, while others dismissed them as primitive. Daniel rarely thought about politics. He only knew that humans had earned their place through hard work and kindness rather than power. His communicator buzzed inside his helmet. A calm voice from command requested his immediate return. Daniel assumed something had broken again. When he entered the main hall, however, he found senior officers waiting with serious expressions. A tall, blue-skinned alien ambassador stood beside them. Daniel froze, confused. The ambassador bowed slightly. "Daniel Hayes, you have been formally invited to attend a royal wedding within the Lurie Empire." Daniel blinked, thinking he misunderstood. He was not a diplomat or a leader. He was just an engineer. The officers exchanged looks, equally puzzled. The ambassador explained that the invitation came directly from the royal court. The princess herself had requested his presence. No further explanation was given. Daniel felt uneasy. He tried to remember if he had done anything important involving the Lurie. Nothing came to mind. Still, refusing such an invitation could be considered disrespectful, and the alliance encouraged cooperation. After a brief discussion, command ordered him to accept. The journey to the Lurie capital took several days. During travel, Daniel studied information about their culture. The Lurie valued logic, tradition, and discipline. Emotional displays were rare. Their ceremonies followed strict patterns, and social mistakes could cause offense. Daniel felt nervous. He was not trained for royal etiquette. When the transport ship exited hyperspace, the Lurie homeworld appeared below like a glowing jewel. Massive cities stretched across continents, their structures elegant and curved like flowing water frozen in time. Soft lights traced the edges of towers, and energy bridges connected floating platforms high above the ground. Upon arrival, Daniel was greeted by silent guards wearing polished armor. Their movements were precise and graceful. He followed them through enormous halls decorated with symbols he could not understand. Many alien nobles watched him with curiosity. Some whispered quietly, clearly surprised that a human had been invited. Daniel noticed that the air felt calm and controlled, almost too perfect. Everyone moved with purpose, yet there was a sense of tension beneath the beauty. He was brought before the royal family. The king sat upon a simple but impressive throne, his expression calm and unreadable. Beside him stood the princess. Daniel felt his breath catch for a moment. She was tall and elegant, with shimmering silver skin and eyes that reflected light like stars. Yet her posture seemed heavy, as if carrying an invisible burden. The king spoke first, welcoming Daniel with formal respect. His voice carried authority but also curiosity. The princess studied Daniel carefully. "You once rescued a Lurie diplomat during a border incident," she said quietly. Memory returned suddenly. Years ago, during a chaotic evacuation mission, Daniel had found an injured alien trapped under debris. He had ignored orders to retreat and stayed until the alien was safe. He never learned their identity. "That diplomat was my mentor," the princess continued. "Your kindness was remembered." Daniel felt embarrassed. To him, it had simply been the right thing to do. The king explained that the upcoming wedding would unite two powerful clans within the empire. It was meant to strengthen stability and prevent conflict. Guests from many worlds had been invited, including representatives from humanity. Daniel realized that he was not only attending a celebration, but also witnessing an important political event. As the first ceremonies began, Daniel struggled to follow complex rituals. He tried to remain respectful, but he accidentally stood at the wrong moment during one procession, causing several nobles to exchange shocked looks. He quickly apologized, and some guards suppressed amusement. Despite mistakes, Daniel's honesty seemed to ease tension. Servants and lower-ranking guests spoke to him more freely than they did with other nobles. He listened carefully, learning about Lurie customs and traditions. During a quiet moment in a garden filled with glowing plants, the princess approached him alone. Without formal audience around them, her posture relaxed slightly. "You are different from what I expected," she said. Daniel smiled awkwardly. "I am not sure if that is good or bad." She tilted her head, studying him. "Humans show emotion openly. It is unusual to us." They spoke about their worlds, sharing stories about culture and daily life. Daniel noticed that despite her calm voice, she seemed uncertain about something. When he asked about the wedding, she hesitated before answering. "It is my duty," she said simply. Daniel sensed that she wanted to say more but held back. Over the next days, he observed growing tension among certain nobles. Quiet arguments ended abruptly when guards approached. Some guests watched the princess with cold expressions. Daniel felt that something was wrong beneath the surface of celebration. One evening, during a formal banquet, a sudden argument broke out between two clans. The atmosphere turned tense. Daniel noticed subtle gestures between several nobles that did not match the calm appearance they showed publicly. His instincts told him that the wedding was not only about unity, but also power. Later that night, the princess secretly requested a private meeting. She appeared more serious than before. "I believe someone wishes to disrupt the ceremony," she said quietly, "but I cannot investigate openly. Every movement I make is watched." Daniel felt surprised that she trusted him with such information. "You are an outsider," she continued. "Unpredictable, they will not expect you to notice things." Daniel hesitated. He was not a spy or a hero, yet he remembered the kindness that had brought him here and felt responsible for helping. "I will do what I can," he said. As he left the meeting, he felt both excitement and fear. He had come to attend a wedding, but now he stood at the center of hidden danger within a royal court. Unseen eyes watched him from distant balconies, and quiet whispers followed his steps through the palace halls. Daniel realized that every choice from this moment forward could change not only his own future, but the fate of an entire empire. Daniel slept little that night. The guest chamber assigned to him was luxurious, but he could not relax. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined shadows moving behind the carved doors and silent guards watching from the far end of the hallway. He reminded himself that he was not a soldier or a spy. He was an engineer. His best tools were patience, logic, and the ability to notice what other people ignored. Morning came with soft light filtering through tall windows. Servants brought a tray of food arranged with strange precision. Daniel thanked them, trying to copy the formal tone he had heard in the palace. The servants bowed and left quickly, as if they were not supposed to speak to him. As soon as he finished eating, he requested permission to walk the outer gardens. He did it casually, as if he simply wanted to see more of the palace. The guard escorting him looked unsure, but the request was allowed. The gardens were not like any place Daniel had seen. The plants glowed faintly, and tiny floating petals drifted through the air like slow snow. Water ran through narrow channels, making a quiet, steady sound. The calm beauty felt almost unreal, like the palace itself was trying to hide the tension Daniel sensed. He kept his pace relaxed. He watched the staff. He watched the guards. He watched the nobles moving in small groups. The Luri did not show emotion easily, but Daniel noticed little things. A hand held too tight behind the back, a pause that lasted half a second too long. Eyes that avoided the princess when she passed. A pair of nobles stood near a stone archway. Their voices were low, but Daniel could tell they were arguing. One of them noticed Daniel and fell silent instantly. The other turned slightly, posture stiff, and both walked away like nothing happened. Daniel remembered what the princess had told him. Someone wanted to disrupt the ceremony. That meant they needed a moment of chaos, a public mistake, or a situation that could turn guests against the royal family. Daniel's mind began building a list of possibilities: a false accusation, a staged accident, a ceremonial failure, or something that looked like an insult between clans. He had no authority to investigate directly, but he could observe, and he could ask questions in harmless ways. Later that day, Daniel attended a rehearsal for one of the wedding rituals. The main hall was filled with music that sounded like soft wind moving through crystal. The bride and groom stood at opposite ends of the platform, each surrounded by attendants from their clans. The king watched with calm focus. The princess stood near him, hands folded, face unreadable. Daniel stayed at the edge with other guests. He tried to look like a quiet observer. During the ritual, an attendant carried a long, ceremonial ribbon made of shimmering fiber. The ribbon represented unity. It was supposed to be tied in a perfect pattern between both families. Daniel saw something small that made his chest tighten. The attendant's hand shook, not from fear, but as if they were trying to hide something. Daniel watched the ribbon closely. A tiny section looked different, slightly darker, as if it had been treated with another substance. When the ribbon touched the floor, it sparked faintly. It was so small most people would miss it. Daniel noticed because he had spent years spotting tiny faults in machines before they turned into disasters. The rehearsal continued, but Daniel's mind raced. If that ribbon was altered, it could fail during the real ceremony. A failure in such an important ritual could be seen as a terrible omen. It could embarrass the royal family and fuel conflict between clans. When the rehearsal ended, Daniel carefully moved closer to the area where the ribbon had been handled. He did not touch anything. He simply watched where the attendants placed it. 2 guards stood nearby, but their attention drifted as nobles began speaking. Daniel waited until the crowd thinned. Then he approached a servant who was collecting trays and decorations. "Excuse me," Daniel said gently. "I'm still learning your customs. That ribbon, is it always the same one used each time?" The servant looked nervous. "It is prepared for the ceremony," the servant replied, voice careful. "Prepared by who?" Daniel asked, smiling as if he was only curious. The servant hesitated. "By the House of Varen, they oversee ceremonial materials." Daniel thanked the servant and stepped away. House of Varen. He stored the name in his memory. That night, Daniel found a moment to speak with the princess in a quiet hallway lit by pale lamps. She approached without guards, moving like she had planned the meeting carefully. "I noticed something during rehearsal," Daniel said softly. "The unity ribbon may have been altered." The princess's eyes narrowed slightly. That small change in expression told Daniel she took him seriously. "Show me," she said. They could not return to the rehearsal hall without raising suspicion. Instead, Daniel described exactly what he saw, down to the tiny spark and the darker fiber. The princess listened closely, her calm face hiding intense focus. "You believe it could fail during the ceremony," she said. "Yes," Daniel answered. "If it breaks at the wrong moment, people will blame the royal court, or blame one clan. It would turn unity into conflict." The princess's hands tightened briefly. "The House of Varen is responsible for ceremonial goods. They are respected. Accusing them without proof would be dangerous." Daniel nodded. "So we don't accuse, we confirm, quietly." The princess studied him for a long moment. "Humans are said to be reckless, yet you speak with patience." Daniel almost laughed. "I fix problems for a living. You learn quickly that panic makes everything worse." The princess's gaze softened just slightly. "Then we will confirm." Over the next days, Daniel and the princess worked like careful shadows moving through a bright palace. They could not act openly, but they could position themselves near key events. They could observe who controlled what. They could track patterns. Daniel noticed something else. Certain nobles from House Varen seemed unusually confident. They spoke in low voices, then stopped the moment the princess walked past. Guards near them seemed extra alert, but not in a protective way. More like they were protecting the nobles from being overheard. Daniel's presence continued to attract attention. Some nobles ignored him, others stared as if he was an insult. A few were curious and even polite. Daniel used those moments to learn. At one reception, a young noble approached him, posture stiff with practiced pride. "You are the human guest," the noble said. "Yes," Daniel replied calmly. The noble's eyes flicked over Daniel's simple uniform. "It is unusual. Our court does not invite outsiders to royal ceremonies without reason." Daniel smiled politely. "I was invited. I am grateful." The noble studied him. "Gratitude is common among your species." Daniel kept his voice friendly. "We believe in showing it. It helps people feel seen." The noble looked away as if the idea was strange. "Emotion is not a tool for governance." Daniel did not argue. He simply said, "Sometimes it is a tool for understanding." The noble left with a quiet huff, but Daniel knew the conversation mattered. In this palace, ideas could be weapons. A human who spoke differently could shake people in ways they did not expect. The princess later found him near a balcony overlooking the city. The glowing towers stretched into the distance, and sky traffic moved like tiny bright insects. "You challenge people without attacking them," she said. Daniel glanced at her. "I'm not here to start a fight. I'm here to prevent one." She stared out at the city, her voice quieter. "I have spent my life learning perfect control, yet your species treats honesty like strength." Daniel did not answer right away. Then he said, "Control is useful, but it can also become a cage." The princess's fingers rested on the balcony edge. "And what of duty?" Daniel met her eyes. "Duty matters, but duty without truth becomes something else. It becomes fear." For a moment, the princess looked like she wanted to say more, but footsteps echoed nearby. She stepped back into royal calm, and Daniel did the same. They were watched. They had to assume every hallway had ears. That evening, Daniel discovered a new clue by accident. He was walking toward the guest wing when a maintenance panel caught his eye. The palace systems were advanced, but Daniel's mind always noticed patterns. This panel had fresh scratches around its seal, like someone had opened it recently. Curiosity tugged at him. He waited until the hallway was empty and knelt beside the panel. It was locked with a simple field latch. Not broken, not forced, just opened by someone with access. Daniel did not open it. He simply pressed his helmet scanner against it and read the heat traces left on the surface. The traces were faint but present. Someone had been there within the last few hours. He stepped away as guards approached. He returned to his room and thought carefully. If someone was tampering with palace systems, it could mean sabotage was larger than a single ribbon. The next day, Daniel found a reason to request access to the palace engineering corridors. He told the staff he was curious about their infrastructure and wished to learn. He expected refusal, but surprisingly, a mid-level official approved it, though a guard escort was assigned. Daniel took this as both an opportunity and a warning. Someone wanted to watch where he went, or someone wanted him in those corridors for a reason. As he walked through maintenance halls, he saw power conduits, gravity stabilizers, and environmental systems. Everything was clean and carefully maintained. Yet Daniel also saw something hidden under perfection. Several junction panels had been replaced recently, but the replacements were slightly different in style than the others. Not wrong, just different enough that an engineer would notice. He asked his escort casually, "Were there upgrades recently?" The guard responded, "Preparations for the wedding, increased security." "Security upgrades in maintenance corridors?" Daniel asked. The guard did not answer. That silence told Daniel enough. Something was being hidden. Later, Daniel shared these observations with the princess during another quiet meeting. She listened, eyes focused. "House Varen oversees ceremonies," she said. "But security upgrades are controlled by the royal shield." Daniel frowned. "So we have two separate groups, the ceremony group and the security group." The princess nodded slowly. "If they work together, it is more dangerous." Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Or one group is being used by the other. Either way, someone is building a path to create a problem during the ceremony, then control the response." The princess's jaw tightened slightly. "That would allow them to claim the royal family failed and needs new leadership." Daniel nodded, "And it could also turn public trust against an outsider, a human." The princess's eyes sharpened. "You believe they will blame you?" Daniel did not want to sound dramatic, but truth mattered. "I think they invited me because I'm useful to you. But the enemies can also use me. If something goes wrong, an outsider makes a perfect scapegoat." The princess remained silent for a moment. Then she said, "I will not allow that." Her voice was calm, but Daniel felt the power behind it. For the first time, he realized she was not simply a trapped royal figure. She had strength, she had intelligence, and she had been holding it back to survive the politics of her court. As the wedding day grew closer, pressure increased. Events became more frequent. Rehearsals became stricter. Guests arrived from other systems. The palace seemed full of smiles and beautiful decorations, yet Daniel felt the tension tighten like a cable ready to snap. Then the first real attempt happened. During a large reception under a domed ceiling, a ceremonial flame was lit to symbolize peace between clans. The flame was not ordinary fire. It was a controlled energy glow held within a delicate field. The field was stable only if the generator remained balanced. Daniel stood near the edge of the crowd, watching quietly. He saw a servant carrying a small device toward the generator station. The servant moved too fast, too direct, avoiding eye contact. Daniel's instincts screamed. He moved before he fully thought. He stepped through the crowd, not running, but cutting a path with calm urgency. He reached the generator station just as the servant leaned in. Daniel saw the device in the servant's hand. It was not a tool. It was a disruptor, small enough to hide in a sleeve. Daniel grabbed the servant's wrist. The servant jolted and tried to pull away. Guards reacted instantly, moving toward them. Several nobles gasped in shock at the sudden movement. Daniel held the servant's wrist firmly, but not cruelly. "Stop," he said sharply. The servant's eyes widened with panic. In that second, Daniel realized the servant might not even understand what they were carrying. They looked afraid, not evil. The disruptor slipped from the servant's sleeve and fell onto the platform. The energy flame flickered, the field trembling. Daniel acted like an engineer, not a warrior. He lunged forward and kicked the disruptor away from the generator. The flame steadied slightly but still trembled. Daniel grabbed the generator housing and adjusted a manual stabilizer dial that he had noticed earlier. The field calmed and the flame returned to steady glow. The hall fell into stunned silence. Guards seized the servant. Nobles whispered rapidly. The king's gaze locked onto Daniel, unreadable. The princess stepped forward, her posture tall and controlled. "What occurred?" she asked. Daniel bowed slightly, forcing himself to remain calm even though his heart hammered. "A device was about to disrupt the generator. I stopped it." A high-ranking noble from House Varen raised their voice. "A human touched sacred equipment." Daniel turned to face the noble, meeting their eyes. "I touched it to prevent disaster. If the field collapsed, it could have caused panic. People could have been hurt." The noble's eyes narrowed, but the crowd could not deny what they had seen. The flame still burned peacefully. Whatever would have happened did not happen because Daniel acted. The king said nothing. He simply watched. After the reception, Daniel was pulled aside by royal guards. They were polite but firm. He was escorted into a private chamber where the king, the princess, and several officials waited. The servant who carried the device was not present. Daniel guessed they were being questioned. The king spoke with controlled authority. "Human Daniel Hayes, you have interfered in a sacred event." Daniel stood straight. "Yes, your majesty, because someone tried to sabotage it." One official snapped. "You cannot claim sabotage without proof." Daniel kept his voice steady. "Then examine the device." It was not a ceremonial tool, it was a disruptor. The princess turned to the officials. "He is correct, I saw the object." Silence filled the room. The king's eyes shifted to his daughter. "You speak with certainty." The princess held his gaze. "I do." The king leaned back slightly thoughtful. "Then someone attempted to create chaos." Daniel nodded. "And someone chose a servant to carry it. That servant looked frightened. It may be coercion." The king's expression remained calm, but Daniel felt a change in the room. The king was not angry at Daniel. He was measuring him, testing him. The king finally said, "You reacted quickly, you prevented embarrassment and potential harm, yet your presence has now become noticeable." Daniel understood. "Which makes me a target." The king did not deny it. "Many will claim you are responsible. They will say you brought disorder." Daniel looked toward the princess, then back to the king. "Then the enemies are closer than we think." The king's gaze sharpened slightly. "Perhaps." After the meeting ended, Daniel and the princess walked together in silence down a quiet corridor. Guards stayed far back, giving them space, but Daniel knew they were still watched. The princess spoke first. "You saved the reception." Daniel exhaled. "Barely. And now everyone knows I'm not just a quiet guest." "That may be useful," she said, "and dangerous." Daniel glanced at her. "That servant, they were scared." The princess nodded slowly. "Fear is a powerful chain. Many in this palace wear it." Daniel stopped walking for a moment. "Do you wear it?" The princess paused. For a heartbeat, her calm slipped. "I have learned to hide it," she said softly, "because showing it invites control." Daniel's voice softened. "Where I come from, showing fear can invite help." The princess looked at him, and in her eyes Daniel saw something human, something raw and honest. "That is why you are dangerous to them," she said quietly. "You do not fit the pattern." They kept walking, but the air between them had changed. Trust had grown not through words, but through shared danger. That night, Daniel returned to his room and found a sealed message waiting on his table. The seal belonged to House Varen. He opened it carefully. The message was short. It claimed Daniel had violated sacred boundaries and would face formal questioning before the wedding. It also warned that further interference would be considered hostile. Daniel's stomach tightened. The trap was closing. He immediately sought out the princess through their agreed hidden route. When she read the message, her expression remained calm, but her eyes turned cold. "They move sooner than expected," she said. Daniel swallowed. "They want to isolate me, question me. Make me look guilty before anything even happens." The princess looked at him with sharp focus. "Then we move faster." Daniel nodded, adrenaline rising. We need proof, not suspicion, proof that will stand in front of the court. The princess stepped closer, voice low and firm. I know one place where proof may exist, a restricted archive used for internal court records. Daniel's eyes widened. Can you access it? The princess's mouth tightened slightly. Only with risk, but risk is already here. They stood in silence for a moment, both understanding the next steps could decide everything. Outside Daniel's chamber, faint footsteps passed, slow and deliberate. Someone was watching his door. Daniel felt the weight of the palace closing in, but he also felt something else, something very human: determination. Humans had survived harsh worlds, wars, and impossible odds. They had learned to adapt, to endure, and to fight without losing their hearts. Daniel was not a warrior, yet he carried that same stubborn strength inside him. He looked at the princess and spoke in steady, simple words. Tell me what you need me to do. I will not let them use fear to control you, and I will not let them turn me into their excuse. The princess's eyes held his gaze. Then we go to the archive, she said, tonight. And in that moment, Daniel understood that he was no longer just attending an alien wedding. He was standing between an empire and the people trying to break it from within. The night was quiet, but the palace seemed alive with unseen tension. Daniel moved silently through the corridors, following the princess as she led him along hidden passageways known only to a few trusted attendants. The halls were lit by pale, floating lights, giving the walls a soft glow that made shadows dance. Every step they took was measured, every sound could betray them. Daniel felt his heartbeat quicken, not from fear but from awareness. He had faced technical challenges and emergencies, but nothing like this. Here, lives, alliances, and honor depended on the smallest action. They reached a massive door engraved with intricate symbols. The princess examined the seal carefully. This is the archive, she whispered. Only senior officials can enter without special clearance. We may be discovered if anyone notices us. She glanced at Daniel, her silver eyes sharp. Are you ready? Daniel nodded. I didn't come this far to hesitate. The princess pressed her hand against a small control panel beside the door. After a soft hum, the lock disengaged. The door creaked slightly as it opened. Inside was a vast room filled with holographic records, files, and storage modules. Soft light reflected off the polished surfaces, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and metals. Daniel stepped carefully, examining the technology with curiosity. Unlike the ceremonial spaces, this place felt functional and quiet. It held secrets. Here, the princess said, pointing to a large module labeled with the House of Varen emblem. This contains activity logs for the wedding preparations. If someone tried to sabotage the ceremony, it would show here. Her tone was steady, but Daniel noticed her fingers tremble slightly. He crouched beside the console, his human intuition noticing details that even trained Luri engineers might overlook. I can read this, he said. The interface is simple, though encrypted. The patterns will reveal recent access. He touched the holographic controls, scanning sequences and timestamps. The system recorded every interaction, every minor adjustment, and every movement of ceremonial equipment. After several tense minutes, he found it. Here, look. This panel was accessed multiple times in the last few days, and not by the same personnel. He pointed to a series of logs. See this. Someone with credentials from House Varen and someone else using a security badge both accessed the ceremonial items, specifically the Unity ribbon generator. The princess leaned in, examining the patterns. That is proof, she said quietly. The sabotage involved coordination between ceremony and security. Someone high in both groups is manipulating events. Daniel frowned. And they may try to frame me for it. I was noticed at the reception. People already suspect me. He paused. We need to act carefully. She nodded. Yes, but this gives us leverage. If we present this at the right moment, we can expose the true conspirators. They studied the logs further, noticing subtle anomalies. Some entries had been manually altered, but not entirely erased. Daniel's human perspective caught the faint inconsistencies, the tiny details that the Luri would have overlooked because they expected perfection. Daniel realized that the conspirators had underestimated him. They assumed a human would not notice small patterns or care enough to investigate. They were wrong. The princess looked at him, her face illuminated by soft blue light. You understand our ways quickly, perhaps too quickly for them. Daniel smiled faintly. I have learned to notice the things others miss. Sometimes survival depends on it. The two worked silently until they had compiled enough evidence to expose the plot. Daniel traced each action back to specific individuals and cross-referenced their locations during critical moments. It became clear that House Varen had planned to sabotage the ceremony using the human as an unwitting scapegoat. If the energy field had failed, or if ceremonial symbols had been damaged, public outrage would have followed. Daniel would have been blamed and the royal family's authority challenged. The princess studied the logs once more. "We must present this carefully," she said. "Not during the ceremony. That would create panic. We need the right moment." Daniel nodded. "We wait until the saboteurs are most exposed, then we act." The next day was tense. Preparations for the wedding continued, and the palace seemed more alive than ever. Nobles moved with precision, servants performed tasks with quiet efficiency, and the princess wore her composed mask. Daniel, however, noticed subtle shifts. Several nobles lingered near restricted areas, observing guests. Servants moved unusually quickly. The human mind could read patterns differently, and Daniel's intuition told him something would happen soon. During the mid-morning banquet, Daniel noticed a servant carrying a small package toward the ceremonial hall. He saw a shadow slip behind the delivery route and recognized the movement from the previous rehearsal sabotage attempt. Daniel nudged the princess, who was discreetly seated near a side entrance. "Now," he whispered, "they are moving too quickly." The princess understood. She calmly stood, signaling a pair of trusted attendants to follow her. Daniel walked alongside her, maintaining composure. Every step was a dance. Every movement had to appear natural while preparing to act decisively. They arrived just as the servant attempted to place the package near the generator controlling the unity flame. Daniel acted first, stepping forward with deliberate calm. He intercepted the servant, holding their wrist firmly. The servant's eyes widened in shock. At the same moment, the princess raised her voice, speaking to the room as if calling for attention. "Stop," she said. "This action is unauthorized." Several guards moved instantly. The conspirators froze, realizing their attempt had been observed. Daniel kept the servant in check, maintaining control without aggression. The package was examined. It was identical to the device he had neutralized the day before. The hall was tense. Nobles whispered, some in disbelief. The king's gaze swept across the room, calm but sharp. Daniel turned to the princess, ready to support her. Her voice carried authority, commanding attention without anger. "You see," she said, "a plot was planned to disrupt the ceremony, and a human was to be blamed." The conspirators tried to speak to deflect blame. Daniel's analysis from the archive records was already ready. Holographic logs projected automatically, showing access times, altered entries, and coordination between security and ceremonial staff. The evidence was undeniable. Several nobles gasped. A few tried to protest, but the king raised a hand, silencing them. "This is serious," he said. His voice was measured, his tone both warning and final. "These actions could have caused great harm to the empire, yet it has been prevented." Daniel's heart pounded, but he kept still, his mind focused. The princess continued, "And it was noticed, intercepted, and recorded. The evidence proves manipulation, not negligence by any guest." The king leaned forward slightly. "Daniel Hayes," he said, addressing him directly. "Your actions have prevented disaster. You have shown not only bravery, but intelligence and judgment." Daniel bowed respectfully. "I only did what seemed right, Your Majesty." The princess approached, placing a delicate hand on his arm. "And you have also shown trustworthiness. Something we cannot ignore." The hall remained quiet, the tension lingering like a held breath. The conspirators were escorted from the room, their faces pale. The nobles whispered to each other, realizing their plans had been foiled by an outsider, a human. The king's expression softened ever so slightly. "Humans are still new to our courts," he said, "yet this one has proven a rare strength, not just courage, but clarity of mind under pressure." Daniel exhaled slowly, relief mixing with disbelief. He had expected suspicion, perhaps even danger, but not recognition. After the immediate threat was neutralized, the princess led Daniel away from the crowd to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The sky was alive with lights from floating towers, traffic moving like bright streams. "You did well," she said softly. "Not because you are strong, but because you think differently. You see patterns we sometimes miss." Daniel smiled, feeling the weight of the last days finally settling. "I only notice what is in front of me," he said. "But sometimes that is enough." She nodded. "Yes, enough to save many lives and perhaps the wedding itself." Daniel looked out at the city, thinking of the future. He had arrived as a guest, underestimated by many. He had observed, analyzed, and acted with care. In doing so, he had proven that humans could offer something unique: empathy combined with logic, courage balanced by understanding, and actions guided by thought rather than fear. The princess turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the city lights. "This court owes you more than you realize," she said. Daniel shook his head gently. "I was just doing what any human would do if given the chance, help where it matters." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why you are different and why you are needed." Days passed and preparations for the wedding resumed under careful supervision. The conspirators had been removed, but Daniel remained alert. The palace was still full of eyes, whispers, and hidden agendas, yet he felt a quiet confidence. His actions had changed something fundamental. Humans, though new, could influence even the oldest of civilizations through careful thought, courage, and honesty. The day of the wedding arrived. The palace was decorated in full splendor. Nobles and dignitaries from across the empire and allied worlds filled the grand halls. The unity flame burned steadily, now reinforced and stabilized, a symbol of peace and strength. Daniel watched from a side platform, calm but aware. Every movement, every gesture could still be a test. The princess approached, her posture regal yet lighter than he had ever seen. "The moment has come," she said, "and you are here not just as a guest, but as a witness to what is possible when trust and courage guide action." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He was no longer just a human in a foreign court. He had become a part of something larger, something that transcended species, tradition, and politics. As the ceremony began, Daniel reflected on the days behind him, the subtle observations, the quiet courage, the moments of doubt, and the choices that defined him. Each decision had mattered. And each choice had proven that humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in the ability to act wisely, to think clearly, and to stand firm in the face of uncertainty. The wedding proceeded flawlessly. The unity flame burned bright, the rituals completed with dignity, and the nobles acknowledged the truth. Humans, though new, could shape events in ways even the most ancient and disciplined civilizations could not predict. Daniel looked at the princess. She met his gaze, and in that silent exchange, understanding passed between them. They had faced danger, deception, and political intrigue together. They had survived, and through it all they had done so with honesty, courage, and trust. Later, in a quiet chamber, the king summoned Daniel. He spoke with authority tempered by respect. "Daniel Hayes, you have acted in a way no outsider could have. You have prevented disaster, preserved honor, and shown qualities that make a human worthy of trust." Daniel bowed, unable to fully express the mixture of pride and humility he felt. "I only did what I could, Your Majesty," the king nodded. "And yet, what you did was extraordinary. You have earned a place here in ways you may not yet understand." As Daniel left the chamber, he felt a shift within the palace. The conspiracies had been uncovered, the wedding preserved, and his actions had not gone unnoticed. He had entered as a guest, but he was leaving the day as someone whose presence carried meaning and weight. A human had proven that courage, insight, and careful judgment could stand alongside tradition and authority. In the quiet moments afterward, Daniel stood in the palace gardens with the princess, the lights of the city sparkling below them. She turned to him, her expression unreadable yet open. "The empire is safer because of you," she said, "and I believe it will be stronger because of what you showed us." Daniel looked at her, thinking of the long days of observation, planning, and decisive action. He had never imagined that attending an alien wedding could change the course of an empire, or that a human could influence a civilization older than humanity itself. Yet here he was, not a mere guest, but a part of something far greater. He smiled faintly. "I only did what humans do best," he said simply. "We adapt, we learn, and we act when it matters most." The princess's eyes softened, a subtle acknowledgement of the truth in his words. Together, they watched the lights of the city, feeling that, in that moment, anything was possible when courage and trust guided action.